I understood she was the love of my life the moment I realized I wasn't ready to face the worst-case scenario without her. The insight wasn't a gentle epiphany. It was a violent tear in the fabric of my carefully constructed solitude, hitting me with the force of a physical impact right there in the sterile silence of the hospital hallway. My chest tightened, not from the anxiety surrounding the immediate crisis, though that was suffocating, but from the searing, undeniable terror of loss, a terror compounded by the profound shame that for so long I had convinced myself I was better off alone. Isolation had been my shield, my religion, and my constant companion. Now, standing on the precipice, facing the potential devastation of my world, I saw my years of self-imposed quarantine for what they truly were: cowardice disguised as strength. 5 years. 5 years since the emergency room lights in Phoenix had flashed the final dreadful signal of my failure. It was my younger brother, Caleb. A sudden, cruel aneurysm. I was supposed to be the responsible one, the stable older brother, but I hadn't answered the phone quickly enough, hadn't caught the subtle warnings, hadn't held his hand when he needed it most. The guilt became a corrosive acid that ate away every urge toward genuine connection. I abandoned the East Coast, moved west to Denver, and buried myself in monumental, unfeeling architecture projects. I specialized in steel and glass, materials that could never betray you, never wither, never leave. My life became a meticulous arrangement of predictable schedules and emotionless interactions. I dated, yes, but only people who understood the unspoken rules. Keep it light, keep it brief, keep it distant. Anything less felt like handing someone the blueprint to my own destruction. Every relationship was temporary by design, a temporary shelter against the storm of loneliness that I ironically believed kept me safe. It happened not beneath the soft glow of candlelight or the roar of a crowded bar, but in the relentlessly flat, beige atmosphere of the city planning office conference room. I was there, Ethan Vance, the man who built impenetrable buildings, presenting a cold, modern design for the new downtown civic center. I was outlining my projected budget when the door clicked open and she stepped inside, a whirlwind of apologies and papers. Sarah. She wasn't wearing anything memorable. I couldn't tell you the color of her jacket even now, but her presence arrested every calculated molecule in my body. She was arguing against my design, speaking passionately for the small, deeply rooted non-profit focused on historical preservation. As she detailed the intangible value of the old structures my firm planned to demolish, her voice, warm, resonant, fundamentally alive, didn't just criticize my plans. It exposed the hollowness of my priorities. Her eyes, the color of a mountain lake on a clear, painful day, found mine across the long mahogany table. They didn't accuse, they simply saw the void. In that brief, charged moment, the air around me thickened, and the carefully maintained scaffolding of my emotional life shuddered. It was the first time in half a decade that I felt the terrifying, exhilarating urge to be known. The small talk that followed the meeting felt like navigating a minefield, yet somehow she made it safe. She approached me later outside the elevator to genuinely apologize for being so sharp about my structural aesthetic. I found myself leaning against the wall, dropping my guard faster than any building I'd ever designed. I confessed that maybe the design was too cold, too efficient, lacking soul. She laughed, a low melodic sound that seemed to chase away the sterile office noise, and instead of arguing about architecture, we talked. About Denver, about the way the light hits the Flatirons at sunset, about the difficulty of maintaining idealism in a pragmatic world. There was an immediate, startling synchronization, an ease that bypassed all the usual filters. She wasn't trying to impress me, she was simply Sarah, honest and fiercely passionate. I found myself revealing small, meaningless truths about my life, the brand of coffee I despised, the recurring nightmare about collapsing structures, details I hadn't shared with anyone outside my therapist, and certainly not with someone I'd just met. With every shared joke, every nod of mutual understanding, the emotional distance I cherished began to compress. I felt secure, inexplicably safe, allowing myself the intoxicating luxury of proximity. Our connection deepened rapidly, fueled by a relentless curiosity about the other's inner world. We spent weeks in a beautiful, dizzying blur, museums, late-night walks through the Reno district, arguing about everything from global politics to the correct way to fold laundry. She loved fiercely, lived loudly, and her sheer, unapologetic vulnerability was a beacon that simultaneously drew me in and terrified me. I, the king of emotional control, found myself watching her sleep, memorizing the way her brow furrowed when she was thinking deeply, sharing childhood secrets about Caleb that hadn't crossed my lips in years. I told her about the suffocating guilt, the constant fear that if I allowed myself to love, I would inevitably fail that person, leading to their pain or their absence. She didn't offer platitudes or try to fix me. She listened, her hand resting lightly on my arm, acknowledging the depth of the scar tissue without demanding its immediate removal. This was the true danger. She wasn't just near my wall, she was showing me that the door had always been unlocked. But the past is a jealous phantom, and it finally demanded its due. My obsession with control meant I couldn't tolerate spontaneity or uncertainty, and Sarah, bless her chaotic heart, was pure improvisation. She decided impulsively to quit her job, declaring she was tired of fighting lost causes and wanted to pursue freelance writing. I reacted poorly, projecting my deepest fears onto her decision. "That's irresponsible, Sarah," I'd snapped one rainy evening, my voice tight with the familiar paranoia of impending doom. "You need stability. You need a plan. What if something happens?" She pulled back, her eyes clouding with confusion and hurt. "Ethan, you don't get to control my life because you couldn't control Caleb's death. This isn't about stability. This is about your fear that if I don't follow your rigid structure, I might disappear." Her accusation was a scalpel, cutting through my carefully constructed rationale. I froze, unable to argue, because she was right. I hadn't been loving her. I had been trying to manage her, trying to build a stable, predictable box around her so she couldn't leave or get hurt. A silent, aching distance settled between us, heavy with unspoken tension and my own crippling inability to apologize for trying to cage her spirit. The tension reached its devastating peak 3 weeks later. I was in a client meeting when my phone flashed. An emergency call from an unknown number. It was a friend of Sarah's, a sudden, unexpected medical event. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to warrant an immediate trip to St. Joseph's Hospital in Denver. The world dissolved into the high-contrast blur of white walls and linoleum floors. Driving there, the familiar, suffocating panic from 5 years ago seized me. This is it. This is the consequence of letting someone in. Now, you are responsible for the pain. I walked into the emergency department lobby, expecting to find chaos, but instead found her, friend, pale and worried, pointing me toward a secluded waiting area. I saw Sarah sitting on a hard plastic chair, wrapped in a blanket, looking small and fragile. I rushed to her, not knowing what to say, consumed by a whirlwind of irrational guilt and paralyzing terror. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but clear. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice weak. I knelt before her, trying to maintain my composure, trying to ask the necessary pragmatic questions: diagnosis, discharge plan, insurance. But the words caught in my throat. I saw the vulnerability in her face, and for the first time, I couldn't distance myself from the pain of potential loss. My control shattered, tears streamed down my face, a raw, ugly display I hadn't allowed since I was a child. "I can't," I choked out, my voice breaking. "I can't lose you. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I tried to push you away because I was terrified of this moment, terrified of caring this much." Sarah didn't speak. She slowly lifted a trembling hand and placed it on the side of my face, wiping away a tear with her thumb. Then she shifted slightly on the cold chair, reaching for my hand. She laced her fingers through mine, a simple, grounding pressure in the sterile, indifferent hallway of St. Joseph's. "You aren't going to lose me, Ethan," she said, her voice steady and true, not promising eternity, but promising the present. "I'm here, and I'm not asking you to stop being afraid. I'm just asking you to stop being alone in the fear." It wasn't a melodramatic speech. It was a mature, weighty truth. She wasn't demanding perfection or demanding that I fix my trauma. She was offering partnership, a shared burden. In that moment, holding her hand, surrounded by the quiet hum of medical machinery, I made the only decision that mattered. I exhaled, feeling the tight knot in my chest loosen for the first time in years. I wouldn't run. I would stay, fully present, completely exposed. I leaned my forehead against hers, inhaling the faint, familiar scent of her skin mixed with the sharp antiseptic smell of the hospital. "I love you, Sarah," I confessed, the words heavy and real, carrying the weight of all the years I had refused to utter them to anyone who truly mattered. "I love you, and I choose the terrifying risk of loving you over the safe certainty of solitude." She smiled, a small, weary, triumphant expression. She didn't say "I love you too" immediately, understanding that my confession needed space to breathe. Instead, she squeezed my hand once more and said, "Good. Now, let's talk to the doctor about getting you some bad coffee." Sarah didn't change my life. She taught me how to live it. She didn't erase the trauma of Caleb, nor did she magically cure my anxiety about loss. But she gave me a vital truth. True strength isn't found in building walls against the world, but in choosing the right person to stand beside you when the walls inevitably crumble. We left the hospital that afternoon, walking out into the sharp Denver air, her leaning lightly on my arm, me carrying the discharged papers. I was no longer the man who feared feeling. I was the man who accepted the beautiful, messy, terrifying vulnerability of being seen, held, and truly loved. And in that simple act of walking together, hand in hand, I finally understood what destiny felt like. It wasn't a sudden flash of light, but the steady, reliable warmth of knowing that from this moment on, no matter what crisis lay ahead, I would never have to face the cold sterility of the hallway alone. We left the hospital that afternoon, walking out into the sharp Denver air, her leaning lightly on my arm, me carrying the discharged papers. I was no longer the man who feared feeling. I was the man who accepted the beautiful, messy, terrifying vulnerability of being seen, held, and truly loved. And in that simple act of walking together hand in hand, I finally understood what destiny felt like. It wasn't a sudden flash of light, but the steady, reliable warmth of knowing that from this moment on, no matter what crisis lay ahead, I would never have to face the cold sterility of the hallway alone. Sarah needed coffee, real coffee, the kind that reminded you that life existed outside of fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. We walked slowly, the late autumn sun sharp against the granite buildings downtown. I was acutely aware of her weight against me, the delicate pressure of her fingers laced through mine. It wasn't a frantic, desperate grasp. It was a simple, confident connection. This was the first time we were walking together not as two people circling a possibility, but as a defined us who had survived a major emotional detonation. There was a security in her presence I had never known. It wasn't that she made the world safe. It was that she made me feel safe enough to navigate the danger. We didn't talk about the "I love you" for a long time. It hung between us, a sacred, tangible thing we were both protecting, like a fragile newborn. Instead, we talked about trivial things, the ridiculousness of hospital food, the absurdity of my bruised ego, the fact that she desperately needed to return a library book. Every mundane detail felt like a brick being laid in a foundation I finally trusted. When we finally settled into a small, bustling coffee shop near Union Station, the silence stretched comfortably, no longer a void that needed filling, but a space where we simply existed, perfectly aligned. I watched her sip her latte, her eyes closed for a moment of pure bliss, and the thought occurred to me with staggering clarity. I didn't just love her presence. I needed the quiet, internal rhythm of her being near mine. This was chemistry redefined, not sparks, but deep, sustaining heat. The next few weeks were a relentless, joyous pursuit of shared history. We spent hours talking, curled up on my ancient, oversized sofa, the city lights blurring outside the window of my apartment. I began peeling back the layers of the wall I had built around Caleb's memory. The truth about how I had carried his unexpected loss, not just the grief, but the crushing guilt that I hadn't been enough, hadn't seen the signs, hadn't prevented the disaster, spilled out of me in ragged, hesitant whispers. I told her how his death had convinced me that the only way to avoid catastrophic pain was to never allow anyone to matter that much again. Sarah listened without judgment, her hand resting gently on my knee, a steady physical anchor. She didn't try to fix the trauma or offer platitudes. Instead, she offered parallel vulnerability. She shared the quiet devastation of her previous marriage dissolving, not because of anger or infidelity, but because of a slow, creeping emotional neglect that left her feeling invisible. "I spent years," she confessed one rainy afternoon, her voice low and husky, "trying to scream loud enough to be heard, only to realize I was standing in an empty room. I learned that being alone isn't the worst fate. Being fundamentally unseen by the person you chose is." It was this shared understanding of deep, specific loneliness that cemented our bond. We weren't just two people falling in love. We were two architects carefully dismantling years of protective scaffolding, trusting the other not to let the whole structure collapse. We laughed about stupid college mistakes, debated the merits of classical literature versus trashy sci-fi, and held each other tight when the old ghosts rattled their chains. I felt myself expanding, breathing deeper. Sarah wasn't just my partner. She was the safe, illuminated space where I finally allowed my true self, flaws and all, to stretch out and exist. But every structure, no matter how lovingly built, is subject to internal pressure. My old fear, the ghost of Caleb's sudden absence, hadn't vanished. It had simply been quieted by the sheer joy of Sarah's presence. It chose the worst possible moment to resurface. Sarah was a freelance photographer, and she had just landed a significant contract, a 6-month project documenting ecological changes in the Pacific Northwest, based primarily in Seattle. She was ecstatic, vibrating with creative energy, and rightly so. She came home that evening radiating light, waving the contract like a victory flag. "Ethan, look at this. This is everything I've worked for. It's 6 months of intensive work, but it could launch my career internationally." She was planning, dreaming, her hands gesturing wildly, tracing itineraries in the air. "I'll be commuting back and forth, of course, every few weeks, and it's a tight schedule, but we can make this work, right? It's only temporary, but it's huge." The words 6 months and commute didn't register as career opportunity in my damaged brain. They registered as departure and instability. The moment she used the word temporary, the world tilted. A cold dread, familiar and sickening, coiled in my stomach. Temporary. That's what Caleb's absence had been, before it became permanent. My walls, which had been so carefully lowered, shot back up with terrifying speed. I saw not Sarah joyful and achieving her dreams, but Sarah packing a suitcase, distancing herself, establishing a life outside the fragile bubble we had created. The old narrative whispered, "She will leave. They always leave. She is planning her exit strategy, and you will be left here, alone, just like last time." I physically recoiled, though I tried to mask it as thoughtful contemplation. 6 months in Seattle, I repeated, my voice flat, betraying none of the internal panic. "That's a long time, Sarah." I didn't mean it as a statement of logistical concern. I meant it as an accusation of emotional abandonment. She stopped mid-sentence, the light dimming in her eyes. The contract slipped a little in her grip. She recognized the sudden chill, the emotional withdrawal that had defined my life before her. "Ethan, I thought you'd be happy for me," she said, her confusion genuine, her joy turning into hurt. I couldn't meet her gaze. I couldn't articulate the sheer terror that this success, this beautiful opportunity for her, felt like the first step toward the inevitable, devastating gap in my life that I knew I couldn't survive again. I pulled away, retreating into the self-protective silence that had been my solitary fortress for so long, and I heard the painful, audible sound of the connection we had so meticulously built suddenly strain, threatening to snap. It was not the grand gestures or the shared laughter that first defined her, but the profound, almost frightening sense of emotional safety. I understood that she was different the night we drove aimlessly through the quiet streets of Santa Monica after a truly terrible dinner, the kind where the food was bland and the service was worse. We should have been annoyed, ready to cut the evening short, but we weren't. We were dissecting the failures of the restaurant industry with the intensity of two investigative journalists, our voices low, conspiratorial, filling the silent car. I remember pulling over near the pier, not because we had reached a destination, but because I didn't want the current of conversation to break. I was halfway through a cynical rant about how modern relationships were just transactional agreements veiled in romance, expecting the usual defensive pushback or worse, the pitying silence. But Sarah didn't do either. She listened, her head slightly tilted, and when I finished, the silence wasn't empty, it was receptive. "You sound like you've been burned by the fine print," she said, her voice soft, devoid of judgment. She didn't try to fix me, didn't offer platitudes about finding the right person. She just acknowledged the scar. I felt a sudden, sharp urge to confess everything. The decade I had spent rebuilding myself after my ex-fiancée, Amelia, vanished without a word, taking every ounce of my future with her. The sterile emotional fortress I had constructed brick by tedious brick. I didn't confess it all then, but I confessed enough. I told her I hadn't let anyone past the lobby of my life in years. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned fully toward me, resting her arm on the console. "Ethan, I can't promise you a lifetime. No one can," she said, her eyes catching the faint streetlights. "But I can promise you this moment, and I promise you honesty. If I ever feel like walking away, I will tell you long before I pack my bag. You won't have to wonder." It was the most brutally honest and comforting thing anyone had ever said to me. It bypassed all my defenses. It was the moment the click happened, the sound of a lock tumbler falling perfectly into place. I realized I was safe not because she was incapable of hurting me, but because she respected me enough to not let me be blindsided. That night, the world didn't stop. It just became quieter, clearer, focused solely on the small, warm sphere of connection we had forged in the dark. The subsequent weeks were a dizzying, beautiful descent into intimacy. We didn't just spend time together, we excavated our histories. I learned about the crushing weight of expectation from her family in Chicago, the dream she had shelved, a dream of designing sustainable, large-scale public art because it felt too frivolous compared to her safe, lucrative job in finance. I told her the true ugly details of the Amelia debacle, the panic attacks, the therapy, the way I checked my phone 10 times a day for years, half expecting a ghost message. There was one rainy Saturday afternoon, curled up on her small, slightly worn sofa in her apartment overlooking the concrete jungle of downtown LA. We had been talking for hours, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the sheer kinetic energy of shared vulnerability. I was describing the moment I walked into our empty apartment 9 years ago, seeing the bare spot on the floor where her favorite armchair used to sit. The memory still felt like physical nausea. Sarah didn't interrupt. She simply reached out and took my hand, lacing her fingers through mine. Her touch wasn't pitying, it was anchoring. "It sounds like you didn't just lose a relationship, Ethan," she murmured, tracing the lines on my palm. "You lost your narrative. And the fear isn't that someone will leave you. The fear is that you will invest everything, only to wake up one day and find the story you believed in was never real." She saw it. She didn't just hear my words. She saw the structure of my trauma. She had articulated the amorphous, terrifying shape of my fear, giving it edges I could finally recognize. In that moment, I felt naked and entirely seen. I remember the rush of gratitude, the intense burst of tenderness that made me pull her close, burying my face in the curve of her neck, inhaling the scent of her skin and the faint trace of cinnamon. That was when the chemistry became more than physical. It became soul deep. We were two broken pieces, finding the perfect complementary jagged edges, fusing into something stronger. This is it, I thought, a quiet, fervent prayer. This is real. I'm safe here. I can finally build again. But safety, I learned, is the most ephemeral of illusions. And my old trauma, like a dormant virus, was always waiting for the perfect host condition to flare up. The obstacle wasn't external, it was internal, a landmine placed by my younger, wounded self, waiting for the successful, happy Sarah to step on it. It happened when she shared the news, radiating pride and relief, holding the official contract for the design consultancy in Seattle. 6 months, a city 200 miles away, a career leap that would define her future, securing her the reputation she deserved. My brain, however, didn't process this as a celebration. It processed the distance, the duration, the independence. The narrative Sarah and I had built on honesty and proximity, that promise she made about telling me before she packed her bag, shattered instantly in the echoing chambers of my fear. My old wiring, the frantic survival mechanism that had kept me alive but solitary for so long, screamed the loudest alarm. Seattle wasn't an opportunity. It was a rehearsal for departure. 6 months was simply the polite transition period before it became permanent. My walls, which had been so carefully lowered, shot back up with terrifying speed. I saw not Sarah joyful and achieving her dreams, but Sarah packing a suitcase, distancing herself, establishing a life outside the fragile bubble we had created. The old narrative whispered, "She will leave. They always leave. She is planning her exit strategy, and you will be left here, alone, just like last time." I physically recoiled, though I tried to mask it as thoughtful contemplation. 6 months in Seattle, I repeated, my voice flat, betraying none of the internal panic. That's a long time, Sarah. I didn't mean it as a statement of logistical concern. I meant it as an accusation of emotional abandonment. She stopped mid-sentence, the light dimming in her eyes. The contract slipped a little in her grip. She recognized the sudden chill, the emotional withdrawal that had defined my life before her. "Ethan, I thought you'd be happy for me," she said, her confusion genuine, her joy turning into hurt. I couldn't meet her gaze. I couldn't articulate the sheer terror that this success, this beautiful opportunity for her, felt like the first step toward the inevitable, devastating gap in my life that I knew I couldn't survive again. I pulled away, retreating into the self-protective silence that had been my solitary fortress for so long, and I heard the painful, audible sound of the connection we had so meticulously built suddenly strain, threatening to snap. The fear wasn't about the distance, it was about the sickening realization that my safety was conditional, dependent entirely on her staying exactly where I needed her to be. And the moment she started flying, my terrified heart insisted she was flying away from me. The fear wasn't about the distance, it was about the sickening realization that my safety was conditional, dependent entirely on her staying exactly where I needed her to be. And the moment she started flying, my terrified heart insisted she was flying away from me. Sarah didn't raise her voice, but the sudden stillness in her demeanor was far more devastating than any shout. She didn't move to comfort me, she simply stood her ground, the contract still a silent, accusing witness between us. "Stop, Ethan," she said, her voice dangerously low, stripped of all the earlier light. "Look at me. You just pulled the emergency brake on us. You took everything we just built, the trust, the hope, and you walled yourself off. Don't you dare retreat into that darkness and leave me standing here, guessing what I did to deserve it. I deserve the truth." Her demand, firm and absolute, shattered the fragile shield I was trying to construct. She wasn't begging. She was insisting on transparency, and it hit me with the force of a physical blow. I couldn't treat her like the ghosts of my past. I had to choose to be honest, even if honesty meant exposing the raw, ugly nerve of my deepest insecurity. I finally lifted my gaze, my breath catching in my throat, tasting the bitter ash of self-pity and shame. "It's not you," I managed, the words scraping out like sandpaper. "God, Sarah, I know this is beautiful for you. I know this is what you worked for. But when I saw that signature, when I saw the name of that city, New York, all I saw was the gap, the distance. Not the miles, but the inevitable, terrifying gap that opens up when the person you love finally realizes they are too big for your life. My voice broke. The memory of my mother packing her bags when she finally got her promotion, the memory of Emily leaving for her fellowship, both decisions framed by success and both ending in my absolute abandonment, flooded the room, thick and suffocating. I built this fortress around my heart, Sarah, brick by careful brick, designed to keep me safe from the moment people choose their ambition over me. And I knew the only way to survive was to never need anyone enough for their leaving to destroy me. I gestured weakly toward the contract. This is the sound of you leaving, and my body just reacted before my mind could stop it. I'm sorry. I'm so terribly sorry that my love is so conditional, so broken, that I punish you for achieving your dreams. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was expansive, terrifyingly empty. Sarah didn't look angry anymore. She looked devastated by the depth of my wound. She gently folded the contract, placing it on the counter, and walked slowly toward me. She didn't touch me, but her proximity demanded attention. "Ethan," she whispered, her eyes holding mine with a fierce, unwavering light. "Listen to me. I know your history. I know the ghosts you carry. But you haven't been abandoned because of your partner's success. You were hurt by people who didn't choose to make you part of their new life. Do you truly believe, after everything we've built, that I would succeed and simply forget the man who taught me how to breathe again?" She paused, letting the weight of her question settle. "You're asking me to choose between my future and you, and the moment you ask that, you are proving your fear right. You are pushing me away before I even had a chance to choose you, completely." Her truth was a harsh, necessary medicine. She wasn't demanding I instantly heal, but she was demanding that I try. She was demanding that I trust her choice, her commitment, and that I stop making her the scapegoat for the betrayals of others. The fear didn't vanish, but for the first time it looked small and ridiculous next to the magnitude of her unwavering presence. I reached out, my hand trembling as I cupped her cheek, feeling the soft warmth of her skin under my palm. This wasn't just about New York, this was about the rest of our lives, a life defined by endless possibilities, not limiting fear. "I can't promise you that the fear will ever completely leave me," I confessed, the words raw but honest. "It's a scar, but I can promise you this. I will not let that fear dictate my choices, and I will never let it cost me you. I will not be the person who clips your wings because I'm terrified of heights. Sarah, I choose you, and I choose your future, whatever distance that requires, whatever work it takes. I will figure out Seattle to New York. We will figure out the logistics, the flights, the schedule. I will face every single morning alone, knowing that you are soaring, because the alternative, living a safe life without the joy of your light, is no life at all." It was the most terrifying declaration I had ever made, because it was a commitment to vulnerability, to risk, and to the possibility of devastating pain, but it was also the freest I had ever felt. A slow, profound smile spread across her face, melting the tension that had gripped her jaw. "Good," she simply said, leaning into my touch, "because I chose you a long time ago, Ethan, and my success isn't a threat to us, it's a foundation. It means we have the resources and the strength to build a life that accommodates both of our dreams." We stood there, not moving, just breathing each other in. In that moment, the future didn't feel like a vast, empty space. It felt like a complicated, beautiful map we were finally drawing together. That evening, we spread the contract on the table, not as a source of conflict, but as a blueprint. We mapped out the flights, the video calls, the weekends in between, weaving a tapestry of intentional connection designed to bridge the distance. Sarah did not change my life. She didn't fix the broken parts of me. What she did, with an unflinching kindness and absolute conviction, was force me to acknowledge the fortress I had built and decide whether I wanted to live inside it or risk everything to stand beside her, exposed to the world. She taught me that true safety isn't found in limiting your exposure to pain, but in choosing a person whose light makes the risk worth taking. Before her, I was surviving, meticulously avoiding the deep waters. Sarah didn't just teach me to swim. She showed me the infinite horizon, pushing me gently off the shore and reminding me that the current might be strong, but she would always be the lighthouse guiding me home. With her, every breath was no longer a cautious calculation, but a profound act of living.